just going to be a quick demo of deployment. We're going to just start from the top. Basically, I'm going to try to deploy the application that I made yesterday, the whole authentication authorization thing. So we'll just start from step one. It says, what are the first things that we need? Well, we need to set up our EC2. So after I set up the EC2, what I'll do is I will set up my GitHub to actually use that information. So sign in, get in here. Okay, so if I go to EC2, I click Launch Instance. Then this is the tricky part. You can't select 1604. So don't select the first one. You got to kind of scroll down a little bit. And here we go. 1404. Okay? So we got to select this one. All right. The next step, it says, is just kind of configure your security groups. So everything else can be pretty much the default. The only thing that needs to change is on the security groups. You'll notice here, I need to add port 80 for HTTP traffic. HTTPS, we don't really need to do that because we're not going to ask you to get like a certificate for that or anything. So it's mostly just adding port 80 and allowing anybody to access it, right? So let's kind of go through, configure the details, click next, click next, click next. So this is where we add a rule. We're just going to add HTTP. Can you guys see that all right? Yeah. Let me blow this up too. Look a little better? Okay. So that's pretty much what we need to have. And let's review and launch. So let's launch this. And let's create a new key pair. So let's call this Rails deploy. Download the key pair. Okay, let's put this, I usually have a directory for this. Yeah, right here. Okay. Now I'm going to launch the instance. So we've kind of set this up. Now let's go and set up our GitHub. So what do we need to do here? Well, if we go over and check out, let's see, GitHub. Let's see how it tells us to do it here, but I'm pretty sure it just tells us to pull down. Yeah, it does. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open here. And let's add that whole project to like a GitHub project. So if I go ls, I go to desktop, coding, Dojo, Rails, and then I go into first Vagrant box, and then I say, let's go into, I believe it's under Rails, cd into login reg demo. Okay. Then I want to create a new Git repository. So I'll say git init. Okay. Then I say git add period, git commit -m, first commit. Okay. Now that I can just go to my GitHub. And then all I'm going to do is create a new repository. We'll call this Rails. Actually, let's do verbose waddle. Yeah, that's a funny one. Okay. We'll have to do a public repository for this one. I would highly recommend if you guys, use GitHub for this, that when you're done, if you're done with the exam, then I really encourage you guys to take down your repository, just because possibly other students can kind of look through your code if you happen to have a publicly available GitHub account, right? And that's only a tier that's available when you're free. Okay, so let's create a repository. And then next we're going to push an existing repository from the command line, so we can just say this. All we're going to do is we're adding this remote repository reference to this particular GitHub page, and there we go. We got everything. Okay, so that should be all that we need on that end. So let's continue on with the deployment instructions. So it says I need to set up my PEM key by only allowing read access. So I say chmod 400, that key name PEM, right? So if I go over, I go back one directory, another directory, another directory, cd one more out, and then cd into AWS PEM keys. I have Rails deploy.pem, so I say chmod 400, Rails deploy.pem. Okay, if I do ls-al, that should show me the permissions. And if your permissions look like this, with just a single R, a bunch of other straight lines, then you're good to go. Okay, awesome. So what we need to do is, if you guys happen to not remember the exact guide, you can just click here. And let's see. You could use this, but basically what the parts consist of is, if I go into here, I grab this public DNS, and what I say is ssh-i. Then I write my PEM key name. Then I say Ubuntu at the DNS. Remember that you need to log in as Ubuntu, right? If you log in as root, your PEM key actually doesn't let you in. So this page should actually look familiar to you guys, because this is what happens every time you start your Vagrant box, right? We did the same thing. We did literally the same thing as saying Vagrant SSH, right? We use this ssh-i command, but it's effectively doing the exact same thing, okay? So this shouldn't seem too foreign to you guys. All right. Next, we just need to say sudo apt-get update. Sudo apt-get -y upgrade. So right here, we're going to install RVM. You actually do believe you had to install RVM on your Vagrant boxes too. Basically what RVM is, it's just known as the Ruby version manager. So it's just a nice way of making sure that like your version of Ruby is, you can change it if you want to. All right. So next we're just going to say, I want to curl SSL that address, and we're just going to tell it to download the newest stable release, right? So if you guys aren't familiar with curl, curl is pretty cool. It's just like a command that lets you download the contents of like websites or whatever the websites take you to. Okay, so it says, all right, it says installation is almost complete of RVM. The last step is we need to run this script, and it's also inside the directions too. Okay, with some of these things, what I'll tell you is that some of the directions are inside of like these like little text boxes. Some of them are bolded, and some of them are neither. So you kind of have to kind of like really look at what the directions are asking and make sure that you're running all the commands that you need to. Okay, so I'm just going to run RVM requirements, which is just downloading all of the required software for RVM to work, which is all this other stuff. Okay. And then this is optional if you have installed all the dependencies, because if you look here, it's literally the same list. It says requirements installation successful. So we don't need to. If you needed to, you could run this, but overall it should be pretty much the exact same thing. Okay? All right. So now what we say is RVM install 2.3.1. And that basically is just saying I need to download version 2.3.1 of Ruby. Again, this is pretty much the exact same stuff that was inside of your provision script, the bootstrap.sh, if you remember that all the way in the beginning of Rails. Okay. Then we're going to make 231 our default. Okay. Then if I say ruby-v, then it's 2.31. Perfect. Then we just want to download Ruby gems, so you could say rvm ruby gems current. Okay, so that's all good. It says if it asks you to update, then you can run this, but you don't need to. All right. Then we're going to install Rails with no internal documentation. The reason why we do no RI, no RDoc is because it just makes the download a lot faster. Because if you don't do that, it would take like 10 minutes. And this thing is already going to take like 2 to 3 minutes. So any questions about this?
By setup, when you said for the exam, at what point would we be, what would you recommend we do in deployment before we start the exam?
I would say get everywhere up to the Git section, because when you do Git, that's when you pull down the stuff, right? So you could do everything up to that point, and then whenever your project's ready, you could pull down. You could do something like that. That's the safest way. If you're a little more experienced with like knowing what to do when you change the app files, then you could actually just upload a dummy file to GitHub, like a dummy Rails project, push that down, and then pull that down, and then when you update it with like your exam code, you could just push the GitHub again and then pull again from your remote server, and you got to restart everything. So that's a little more complex, but that should actually save you even more time if you can do it. I do believe actually one of the fellow instructors, Shane, a cool guy from San Jose, he actually put up these nice install directions for swapping in the deployed Rails projects. So you can use that as reference as well. Okay? Cool. So, all right, now it just finished. So what if I say Rails-v? Then I'll get 427. Awesome. So all we need to do now is just install Passenger. So again, Passenger is going to be the thing that allows us to get traffic from port 80 and tell our Rails app, oh, hey, you're actually getting this traffic to 3000, so that our Rails app can respond. Okay. So we need to install Nginx after this, and this part of the directions is kind of involved, only because they it's like a error-driven development, I guess, kind of thing. But like, we basically are going to go through this prompt and then like fail the requirements and then go through it after we fix the requirements. That's just how the directions are laid out, so I'm just going to do it that way for you guys. But yeah, just keep that in mind. All right, there we go. So we're just going to install Passenger and the Nginx module for that. So we need to install this module that connects Passenger with Nginx before we install Nginx. So enter to continue. So this is where it gets a little weird. We have to select Ruby and Node.js. So we unselect Python. I have to press space. If you press space, that changes the selection. And then you select Node.js. So these are the two that you need. Now, it says we're going to get like this bad prompt, right? And it says this software is not installed. Don't worry, this installer will tell you how to install them. So if you press enter to continue, this is the command you need to run. Okay? So let's grab all of this. Oops. Are you root? Oh, I probably have to run this as sudo. Okay. So that's what we did. Then we're just going to run the previous command, this rvm sudo install nginx module. We're going to press enter again. We're going to select Node.js and Ruby again. And we're going to get another error. Okay. So at this point, it says Control C to abort this installer recommended. Please abort the installer, okay? So once you've aborted the installer, you can literally just run the code that they have up here. It's going to be the same thing as what we have in the actual deployment notes down here, okay? So we can just run this. So what this does is it creates like virtual memory in order for Passenger to like work. And that's because it doesn't come out with a lot of virtual memory out of the box. So like kind of like a long-winded explanation, but you can take your hard drive space and turn it into virtual memory. And that's what we're doing here. We're creating a swap to hold on to that virtual memory. Okay. So let's create the swap directory. And then let's also swap to that swap directory. Oh, oops. Okay, so now that we swapped, I don't think we got any of those permission errors, so it says to swap back off and then swap back on. I have no idea why they ask us to do this, but yeah, swap on, swap off, okay? All right, so we're gonna run this command the final time, and it should actually walk us all the way through. So again, we have to press enter, click Node.js and Ruby, and there we go. So right here, it says, do I want to install Nginx right now? And might as well. So we're in this case, we have to press 1. Now when this is done, it's going to ask us for a directory to keep all the Nginx stuff. And in this case, you can't use the default. You have to tell it to use a new directory called etc Nginx. Okay, so this part's very important. So I would say this is probably the most sensitive part of deployment next to editing like those text files. Okay, so we've installed Nginx. I don't think, I'm not going to ask you guys to use Postgres because Postgres doesn't really happen until you do Rails 2. And yeah, I just don't want to force you guys to use Postgres. Ideally, if we did have more time, then I would encourage you guys to use Postgres because it's a little more secure. Okay, so we don't need to do this section. So let's go over into Node.js Git and installing Rails. Okay, so yeah, this is going to take a while, just so you guys know. So any questions about this stuff? I know it's like very abstract, very like, just write the code that is shown to you on this page, right? But if you do have any questions, I think this would be the best time to answer.
So no, we don't have to remove any files inside the folder.
No, we don't need to git ignore anything like that. From my understanding, no.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we selecting Node.js? Like, why that?
Why that has to be there?
Yeah. Where does that come from?
The thing is, like, when you install Node, it actually allows you to sort of spin up these really quick servers, and I think that's the thing that Passenger needs in order to work properly. Again, that's kind of like a cop-out answer, but we do need Node.js for its web server capabilities, from my understanding. Yeah, and that'll make more sense when you take me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's gonna take a while. Should be close to done. It usually gives me like a nice little congratulations message, so we'll wait for that.
ask a question? Just kind of personal things. Um, when, when you try to show your work to the customer, do you also utilize this method?
Um,
Or
like
this,
to a customer, like if you're like a developer for somebody, usually we'll
demonstrate?
show them like a the local version first, and then you'll deploy it to like a staging server, and then the staging server could be hosted on like EC2 or something like that. Um, but you wouldn't immediately show them a deployed thing. You would probably show them the local version first so that they could see your progress, I
So on
suppose.
your computer?
Yeah, on just on your computer. Yeah. Um, but that being said, if they like are like a remote person, like they need to see it somewhere else, then it would likely be like you push it to like a deployed staging server, and then they can look at that staging server and then like kind of test it out. Yeah. All right. Cool. So the next part is we're just going to install Node.js and Git. Git is fairly self-explanatory. Why we need to install? Just say yes. Sudo apt get install Git. All right. Now let's go to var. So we need to go to this directory var, and we need to create www. I just want to make sure that there is no www already. Yeah, so we say sudo make directory www. So now we'll see www right at the end, right here. Okay. Then we're going to go into the www. Oh. Okay. Next, so this is the place where we git clone. So what I could say is when I go to click the clone link, if I copy this, I could say sudo git clone this. Okay. Now that we've done that, we need to actually change ownership of the Rails project. So do you guys remember like a while back, well, not a while back, but like during every demo I did, I had to run this command to change ownership between the Vagrant box stuff and my stuff? That's what we're doing here. So we have to say sudo change ownership recursively on verbose waddle. Why is it not doing it? Hold on. What's the name of the directory? Yeah, it is sudo change ownership -r verbose waddle. And then I need to say I need to change ownership to Ubuntu. Oh, that's why. It's Ubuntu then verbose waddle. There we go. Okay, so now we won't run into any more permission errors. So let's cd into verbose waddle, and let's just do bundle install. Right, all the gems are kind of part of the app, and we need to install them again over here. Okay. The next thing we need to do is we need to create this development log file. The only reason we're doing this is to like let the logger kind of work out of the box from Rails. So again, we have to say, oh, does that go in? Yes, it goes in that same directory. So then we say log / development log, and then we need to change permission again. So we say sudo chmod 666, I believe is the one they asked us. Yeah, 0666. And then I need to say log development log, right? The command they give you here is like the absolute directory, but since we're already in var www verbose waddle, you could just omit that part and then just run it on this part, okay? And it should do the exact same thing. All right. Next, we need to just do our rake db migrate. All right, so that's our newly created tables, which means that we're getting a blank database, right? So how can we check if our stuff is working? now we have the Rails console here. This is a really good step. So I could say, all right, so I could say like user.create, email is test@test.com, password is password, password confirmation is password. So we're all good. And then we can just exit here. So we know that we can use the Rails console properly, so that's like a big step, which is really nice. So we need to get this Nginx startup script, which is like hosted on someone's GitHub. Yeah, we're just gonna have to do that. So let's see, let's make sure that we're running it from the right directory. And the directory that we're running it from is an absolute directory, right? Because it starts with the slash. So it doesn't matter where we run this from, okay? Cool, so that was all done. Then we need to make this script executable and then turn it into our Nginx file. So, all right, cd into that directory. And then let's just say sudo vim nginx. So this is going to be something that's a little different than what you've usually worked with before. But basically, this startup script is what allows Passenger and Nginx and all that other stuff to play really nicely. So it says right here, we need to change 2 lines. We need to change line 21 and 22. So let's go to line 21. So you'll notice at the bottom right, you'll see that line indicator. So I need to press Insert, and I need to delete all of this section right here. Then I can paste in my new code, right? Same thing for the PID file. What you do notice is that the default is just like opt user or something like that. So you could just delete everything up to conf and logs and just replace it with etc nginx. Or you could do what I did and just delete the whole thing. Okay? So in order to get out of here, I press escape to get out of insert mode. I press colon to open up the command window, and I say WQ to write and quit. Okay? And that should do it. Oh, oops. I also need to say line 87 right here. So let's copy this. Let's run vim again. So let's go down to line 87. Okay, so this is the new thing we need to change. So let me demonstrate. Instead of user local nginx, all we say instead is we say etc nginx. And this is actually a place where it might be easier to just edit it in place rather than copy and paste this whole thing. Okay? All right. Now we could say sudo service nginx start. Okay, so it's started up. We're all good. Now we need to. This is the last step. Okay, and this is the step that's kind of the trickiest for some folks because it is. It looks like you can copy and paste it, but you can't. So we need to go into this directory and we need to make the sites available and sites enabled directory. So sudo make directory sites available, sudo make directory sites enabled. Okay, now if I look in here, I should be able to see sites available, sites enabled. Cool. Now, we need to go inside of the conf directory and open up nginx.conf. So let's cd into conf, and let's sudo vim nginx.conf. Okay? You can also run it in VI. I just prefer to use vim, but it should be pretty much the exact same thing. Okay? So it says, okay, I'm going to write this after line 82. So let's go all the way down to line 82. So it'll go right here, right? So right after this curly brace, then I write include. So this is the spot where I want to do it. Oops. paste that in. Okay? Awesome. So next, I just need to create my rails.conf. So this is the trickiest part right here. So let me copy this. CD into sites. I believe it's sites available first. Yeah. Then I'm going to create the nginx, rails.conf. Okay. Then rails.conf is going to contain this information. So what I like to do with this kind of stuff is I like to just paste it into a text editor so that I could figure out, okay, what is this information I need to grab, right? So I need to grab the public IP address. So that public IP address is located here in the EC2 console. So I can replace that. Then what's the name of my project folder? It was verbose waddle, right? Okay, cool. Anything else I need to change? I don't think so, right? So there we go. So now I can say sudo vim rails.conf. I can just insert, press I, paste in the whole file, make sure I get the whole word server. Sometimes I get erver, I don't know why. Write and quit, and then we're good. Okay. Next, we're just creating a symbolic link between sites enabled and sites available. This is something that, for those of you who've done like mean, might seem a little familiar. Okay. Then sudo service nginx restart. Okay. So let's test this out. Let's go over to our public IP. See if it works. There we go. Deployed app. So I can use that test user, so I could say test at test.com, password, and I'm in. Okay?
Password. Could we? It's okay to show you the text.
No, I mean, this is just like demo code. You'd probably turn it into a password field. I just do it for like debugging so that I know what my password is, like when I'm typing it out, right? But overall, yeah, you shouldn't. You should make that a password field. Okay? So a couple of things I wanted to note. So the Postgres part, if you're not going to use Postgres, don't do it, right? Don't just blindly go through and copy all this stuff for Postgres if you're not going to use Postgres. The next part is essentially the configuring nginx section is the last part of deployment. The domain name is if you wanted to like go further and use a domain name, right? Then it'll show you how to set that all up. And then same thing for HTTPS, because you do need to get a certification, and it's just a little longer process, but this is just resources here for you. Okay? So yeah. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. And then the last thing is kind of strange, but the belt reviewer is in the deployment section. So if you're looking for the belt reviewer, it's in the deployment section. Okay? So any questions about this?
What would be like the advantage of doing the HTTPS one?
It encrypts your traffic end to end.
Okay.
So basically, imagine like you're making some super famous website. Everybody wants to hack your users, right?
Yeah.
Then what they could do is they could pretend to be like a Wi-Fi hotspot. The users connect to the hacker intercepts the traffic, and if it's not encrypted, they can read the contents of your traffic, the requests and responses, right?
By hacking the Wi-Fi hotspot?
By pretending to be the Wi-Fi hotspot, right? That being said, HTTPS does kind of prevent that because what they'll get is encrypted traffic, not the plain traffic. Overall, though, I mean, like, heck, unless you're like Facebook or something, it's not the hugest thing, right? But it's a concern. Like, if you're ever going to work on any like production level website, then you definitely want HTTPS, right? Like anything e-commerce, definitely HTTPS, right? Yeah, exactly, right? Um, Even like video game stuff, right? I don't know. People take their video games really seriously. Okay. So if I was to kind of go over this process, we just need to install a bunch of software in the beginning. We need to set up Passenger. Setting up Nginx with Passenger takes probably the longest time. The trickiest part overall is probably this setting up of the nginx.conf, just because like you have to like create a bunch of directories, create some files in those directories, do a bunch of crack to those files, right? That's what makes it a little difficult. Okay. So any questions before I end this demo? No? You guys are all good?
Say a little bit more about like the domain option, like what you want to like.
Well, if you're gonna ever like, if you wanted to use this project as like a portfolio piece, right? Then you'd actually want to attach it to a domain name, because it's kind of unprofessional to just tell them, can you enter in this, series of 4 3-digit numbers? It's kind of weird, or 5 3-digit numbers. Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you guys.